Okay, we're back with my conversation with Ordonna Sargeant, and she breaks it down with the real deal with being a Scrum Master and definitely providing that distinction of why you need to have a dedicated role for the Scrum Master and why it's good to have a dedicated role for the product owner. Take a listen.
Oh, it sounds like it. So they had this product owner who wasn't maintaining the product backlog, and you needed to come in and coach them and get them back on track. Did you have the advantage? Because people talk about like, it's good practice if you can get, especially if you're new into Agile, to have an Agile coach. Were you given that? You just
absolutely
baptism by fire?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. And like the thing about a product owner, and I say this to people who are like, what's the difference between project management and product? I don't get it. And it's like a product owner has the responsibility to make sure that they are listening to what the client, whoever they're building for, is interested in. They're listening to the trends of the industry, what's happening, what's new, what's coming, where's the innovation. They have to pay attention to tech debt. Like, okay, we'll put off cleaning up the code later. We'll do that later. Like they have to pay attention to that, as well as what does your company want to do? What does your company want to be known for? So they have all kinds of things to balance around what gets priority in the backlog. And I was just like, well, who's running this ship? I was like, that's their role. Their role is to manage specifically that. But if there's a Scrum Master is saying, if this is the priority, the team's going to work on this. I'm going to help them protect that sprint, right? So if you're going to work for 2 weeks and they're like, well, this is important. The CEO said you have to do this now. I'm like, this is in the middle of the sprint. I was like, so you're going to lose what we committed to, and the likelihood of us finishing what you just asked for is slim because we have to plan for it. Like you don't just randomly build that one thing. The team has to talk about how they build it. I was like, there has to be tickets. There has to be, definition of done. How do they know they did it right? Like, I was like, you will lose more time than you will gain doing it right now and stopping everything. I was like, so being able to explain that and articulate it and come up with proof. I was like, do you remember when we did this last time?
Right.
It was like, you remember? It was like 2 sprints ago. Like, you remember last month? It was bad. Like, so like being able to explain that and like earn that trust and like be able to remove the blockers, stop impediments, that kind of thing is like, honestly, a full-time job. Honestly.
Okay, so then walk us through then, Ordonna. Honestly, because I think people don't see the full-time job aspects of being a Scrum Master. So can you think of like just what you do, like hour by hour, what a day in the life of a Scrum Master looks like? Because a lot of people think like removing impediments, like they're just going to meetings and not doing anything. They could be doing the development. And I'm like, what?
Oh no, that's not how it works. Okay, so day in the life. You come in, get yourself together. Now COVID, you wake up, you go to your computer. And the first thing is the stand-up. Okay. Right. So typically a stand-up shouldn't be a large number of people. So I had more than one stand-up. Right. Okay. So the front end team came together and I would have a stand-up with them. We would walk through, and you have to also decide, how are you looking through the tickets in the morning? Like, are they just saying what they're doing? Is it a Kanban board? When you have a Kanban board, you can see like, guys, we're halfway through the sprint. There's a lot still in to do. What's going on? Like, so you can literally see how the team is tracking, but you have everyone go around. They say what they're working on. They could give a quick blurb about, hey, I'm blocked on this ticket, or I can't move this next ticket unless it goes through QA. Can we move that along today? And you have that quick, everyone say what's going on. They call out any impediment to the Scrum Master, and then you move on. You say if they get stuck, you go, let's put that in the parking lot. We'll talk about it right after stand up. And you unearth any issues right there, right? You just say it real quick and then you move on. And, some teams really still do what I did yesterday, what I do today, and like any blockers, they still do that. And then I'll have any other stand-ups that I need to have, the impediments that I get. I get things like, Donna, so someone had an emergency and they're going to be out. So now I know we have X amount of capacity and now there's going to be less people to work on this, right? So now that changes whether or not I will get this sprint completed. Like, will the sprint actually close with everything done because now we have less people? So like those kinds of things you have to like to figure out what are we going to do, etc. Or Donna, my manager said I don't have to work on this. They need me for something else. I'm like, okay. So that's something I have to go fix and figure out afterwards. And after the stand-ups, whatever meetings we have to have in terms of like issues, they have to have a spike or whatever it is that they have to work on. I have to make sure like it's documented. Where does this live? And then I would be either working with the product owner around, hey, are we all set for the grooming that's coming up? Like, are we, like calling it grooming,
refinement.
But like anyway, refinement. Yeah. Like, are we all set? Like, are the tickets like where they need to be? Do you have the definition done? Do you have to break those out? Like, where are we? How can I help? There's also making sure that when we have to do a demo or we have to present to the client as to where we're going, there's a difference between a demo and presenting to an executive team. If there's an executive team where they need to know like how are we tracking? Are we going to close on time? Are we still on track? If someone says, based on the last demo, I want to change things, that's a meeting me and the product owner have to make sure that it's documented so that when they have their next meeting to plan for the sprint, like sprint planning, they know that there's going to be a shift. You don't change it in the middle of the sprint, because our product owner would be like, let's change it now. I'm like, no. So there's those kinds of things. And then like presenting, how are we tracking? What are the lessons learned? Like all of that type of work, as well as sprint over sprint. How are we doing? What is the burn down? How are we tracking towards this? If we need more, and you're doing this from maybe more than one team. I did it from more than one team. Okay. So I had the front end team and the back end team doing this. And then there was like a small little group that had their own thing and they had their own board. Right. So all of this is happening. And I'm also trying to make sure that the design team who's giving them the designs is done before they start the next sprint. So there's designs that have to come over that go inside of the tickets. If those aren't done, then they're not building the spec. So it's like all of these different things are happening at the same time every day.
And from your experience, and that's a lot, so I know that when we talk about the Scrum framework in particular, just Agile overall, we want to minimize all these needless meetings for the team so that they can do the development work. Are you in the Scrum Master role more in the meetings? Like you're that intermediary where, hey, you don't need to be in meetings because I'm the one who's going to take care of it. Is that where it's a lot of, ad hoc meetings, planned meetings, but it's those with the design team, with that manager who wants to pull out that staff member?
Right. My job is to make sure that they have as much development time as possible. Gotcha. So like when the team is working on certain things, it's like, it's very rare that I'm going to say, no, I need you in this meeting. Like we're going to use the ceremonies for the meetings. So like if they have a meeting, it's usually because they've planned it as a spike. Okay. Like if I plan a meeting, it's because there's like either a new training or, based on the retro, we decided we wanted to do this style of stand up. So I'm putting into action one of the two things that we said, this is what we're going to implement in the next sprint. Like, so that kind of thing is something that I would own to make sure that happens without them having to figure it all out. I'm the one just delivering that information to them and they're figuring it out and working during their development hours. I'm not interrupting that at all.
Blockers and impediments and tracking boards. Oh my. Ordonna told us her job is to make sure that her team has as much development time as possible. Think being a Scrum Master is cakewalk? Think again. Ordonna sure did make it clear some of the challenges as well as the triumphs that you achieve by being in that Scrum Master role. Stay tuned for the next episode where we get into more conversation with Ordonna Sargeant. Thanks so much for listening.